Okay, well, so to start, like, give us the punchline, give us the big news.
We had a baby.
We had a baby.
We had a baby boy, Joshua. Um, yeah, 2 months ago, um, December 14th to be exact. Yeah.
Okay. Mm.
You know what's crazy about that date is so a year ago when I did an embryo transfer and it failed, and I don't know if you remember, like I was hysterical, sobbing, just it was our last embryo from that cycle, but we
Yes.
transferred that embryo on December 14th.
Oh, wow.
And a year later, I had him.
That's
Yeah.
pretty epic. Like to really be
Right?
at like full completion, right?
Yeah. Because he was late. So I was expecting end of November. Um, Probably was going to be when he arrived, and it was like significantly late, and I was like, what is going on? And then your phone will give you a year ago, and it was me doing the embryo transfer, the last one of the last IVF cycle, that I was like, okay, it didn't work, I'm like done.
Oh,
um and it was just like this really beautiful fulfillment of a promise.
yes. Oh, that's so cool. Okay, so if you guys don't know, well, first of all, giveaway today is $100 gift card. You guys know we always do. Any comment, you're entered to win as a thank you for being here. But the other thing that's important to say is Robyn and I also did an episode for the Literally reunion series that we have going on. So there is a whole conversation there. And what we talk about a lot there is kind of everything that's happened in between. Like Robyn really catches this up on like, where has she been? What was her pregnancy like? What was planning for maternity leave like? All of that kind of stuff. So we're going to kind of skip that now, but it is there for you. Robyn gives us like all the details. But today what we really wanted to talk about is like not only sharing this with all of you, but sharing like what it looks like for Robyn to sit in that right now, because I think there's such a parallel to business of like, what does it look like when you've gotten the thing that you've been working on getting for so long? Like, what does it look like when everything has been aimed at this one outcome or this one goal, and then you're sitting in it? Like what happens then? Because I think like for a lot of people, it's actually really hard to hold that, and they move the goal and they move the needle and they change things up constantly instead of being like, wow, the discomfort in sitting and getting almost everything you wanted is intense. It's activating. It brings up a lot. And I feel like you are the perfect person to share with us on this, because I feel like everyone watched how committed you were to this, how much you wanted it, how much you gave up for it. And so
Mhm.
to be here like 8 weeks later, like sitting in it, it's probably a lot.
Yeah. It's a
You're like,
lot.
that's a mild way to put it.
Hello. I've always been a relentless optimist, and so this is actually very unfamiliar to me because, we do know optimism. There's a component of optimism that's genetic, and it's
Yeah.
it's wired into us, and I've been blessed to have that. But the trauma has changed so much of my programming around joy, hope, abundance, things working out, like all of that. And it's fascinating. I actually listened to a podcast from a guy, Diary of a CEO, but he has a guest on who does brain scans, and he said that we can scan a brain and he can identify on that brain scan in the shape of, I think it was diamonds, significant trauma, and like how the brain has like rewired itself around that. And and so I think I'm in this thawing period of like, okay, there was so much I needed to process that I was like kicking the can down the road, like, okay, I don't have space to process that. I have to just like deal. And so now I'm like holding this joy, like happiness I haven't felt for years and years and years and years and years. Literally forgot what it feels like. And processing the grief differently because I
Mhm.
can feel that joy so much now, right? Like I can
Mhm.
access more of me. And also, there's just this like breathing space for like dreaming again, a different dream. And like what's possible when there's more space and there's capacity, you know, like, yeah, newborns are exhausting, but you have no idea how exhausting it is to be in a a trauma cycle for 4 years. Um, that's like the real flex. It's like, can you really show up then, not like a little sleep deprived from a baby?
Yeah.
So now I have this incredible energy and capacity for different things that I feel like is just so refreshing to be able to like sit there.
It's interesting you said that about the trauma. Like, so I guess spoiler alert a little bit, not really, but in season 11 of Literally, which comes out next month, Robyn was season 9. This is one of the things we were talking about. Our coachee had just gone through something big, and we were talking about how like you literally have a different brain
Yeah.
after you go through trauma, and you have to acknowledge that you have a different.
Yes.
And when you acknowledge you have a different brain, it's not that that can't be frustrating or you can't have grief around that, but it does get easier because you're not expecting yourself to operate with this old brain in this new setting, right?
Exactly. Yes.
I feel like something else that I think people really resonated with in terms of your season is just like that, like mix of what you were talking about earlier of like hopeful optimist and deep dark questioning of like every like thing that you once believed and every kind of thought process you once had. And so coming out on the other side of that, like how is that landing on your body? Like what is that feeling like now? Or maybe even like what's the process you had to go through to like refine those beliefs?
Yeah. I think I had to really truly let go that everything happens for a reason story.
Yeah.
I had that for so many years of my life until I didn't. And I was like, I just can't make sense of not even just my own stuff, but I can't make sense of like collective stuff too.
Yeah.
Um, and so like really believing like I don't, because the thing that humans hate is uncertainty and control, lack of control, right? And so it's like, how can we acknowledge that there are things that we cannot control? There are things that are uncertain, like things might turn out well, they might turn out badly. Um, and what's the thing that actually gets us through that? Like, can we trust that we can figure it out? Can we trust that we are held, whether you have
Yeah.
a higher faith or not? Do you have people in your life? Do you have a support system? Do you have a nervous system? Do you have a brain? Do you have a body that you trust? Like, what are the things that you can really rely on as stable and consistent in your life? And to come back to, like, to me, it's my faith. Which is funny because it's the thing I lost and then the thing I gained too. But also self-trust. Like this was a real journey of like just deep, deep inner knowing and trusting against all odds and against science and against stats and against even my own family's
Mm-hmm.
input. Yeah, I literally felt like I was on an island. And it's beautiful now because every day my husband, almost pretty much every day, he wakes up and he says, thank you. Like, I'm going to tell our son every day what you did and how hard you believed in him and that I believed in you to get us here. Because it really felt like I was on an island. And I think that's the message that some people need to hear today is like, even if you're on an island, but you just know, you know, this is for you. It's so important to trust that piece. And
Yeah.
that's the hard thing. Like in business and life, it's like when our journeys are so personal, there's no roadmap, there's no blueprint. You know, as a business coach, people say to us, like, oh, what did this client do to get that success? I want to copy that.
Yeah.
And if you're a good business coach, it's like, no, 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 let's come back to you. Let's come back to what you need. Let's come to your personal success code. And the same thing in life in any of these decisions. For me, it was a baby. For you, it might be a partner or a dream or whatever. But like, what do you know in your heart that's meant for you? And like, are you willing to stand by that even when nobody else gets it or everybody thinks you're crazy?
Totally. Nikki said she didn't get the optimist gene. She got the hypervigilant gene. I got that one
I
too.
got that one now too. Yeah.
Same.
Yeah. That
Um,
one's real strong these days.
yeah, right. Like I know what that feels like. But Anna said so true. Even in the hardest moments, we aren't alone. We're divinely supported. And the more we believe, the more we allow support, pursue support. I think that's so true too. It's like
Mhm.
the more you trust yourself, the safer it is to trust other people and others.
Yes.
The less you trust yourself, the harder it is to trust in other people, right? I think that's really true. Sometimes I see that with clients where it's like, okay, like you're starting to trust yourself. Now you have to work on trusting other people. You have to trust that your
Mhm.
clients can hold themselves. You have to trust that other people are okay. You
Mhm.
have to trust your team wants to be there and to help you, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I think that like that really is such like a thing that you had to lean into on this journey too, where it's like you had to trust yourself and then you had to trust that like everyone on your team, so to speak, like wanted this to come to fruition. We'll skip that story because you told a beautiful story on the podcast about your dog.
Mhm.
And I feel like everyone can listen to that. But I think what you're saying is so important is like the more we like find trust and resourcing within ourselves, the easier it is to get it outward. The
Yeah.
more we have that here, the harder and harder it gets to pull that in, right? Like if you didn't have that rootedness throughout your whole process, you probably would have just been like, oh, my team doesn't even want to support me and my doctor's not even doing
Mhm.
this and this and that. And you would have just like given up, right?
Mhm. Oh yeah. 100%. And the part of that that's really interesting to me is I know that when I personally am struggling, I hide. Like I'm a
Yeah.
hider. I don't want people to see me in pain. I don't want to make someone else's like I don't want to bring my bad vibes to the room, right? And so I'll isolate myself to like fix my vibes. And I couldn't do that for 4 years. And so part of this journey has been like letting that vulnerability be a strength and like letting people love you, letting people support you,
Mhm.
letting people cheer for you. I borrowed belief from so many people. And I think that's also really hard is like, it connects that piece you say, but like also trusting that sometimes people in your team will be better for you and do it better than you and like want it more for you on some days and letting that be like receiving that, especially for those of us that are like type A and ambitious and successful and independent, and we have relied on ourselves to solve a lot of problems. What's it like to kind of take a little bit of a backseat in the doing, like not in the
Mhm.
being, hold the trust, but
Yeah.
like also receive from people? That has been a gift and it's translated in my business. It's the reason I can work right now with a newborn, and
Yeah.
have both.
It's really interesting because what comes up for me when you say all that is like, you know, there's trusting other people to support you, of course, but there's also trusting the receiving of the thing you wanted, right?
Mhm.
Like, I think people get really freaked out by that too, where it's like they get the thing, whatever, let's say in business, it's
Mhm.
you make a certain amount of money. The thing the brain always does is it's going to go away,
Oh yeah,
right? Like
totally.
something's going to happen. I'm not going to be able to repeat this. All of that stuff comes up.
Mhm.
And it's like you again have to go back to like, I trust myself. I trust my support. I trust like this
Yeah.
high power vision, whatever it is for you. But I think that that's really helpful because it's like you have to keep unlocking these next levels of trust. And you have to be at the highest and almost like most vulnerable level of trust to have all the things you want, right?
It's it's almost like getting the good thing. We have to pay for that in suffering. And if we didn't suffer on the way to get it, we're paying after we get it in our brain. It's like, I'm going to have to suffer in some way to balance the scales here, right? So, like, we get the good thing, and then it's like, well, something bad's going to be around the corner because, like, it can't all just be good. And I forget who said it, but they said that happiness, vitality, success, thriving is actually a moral responsibility. And
Hmm.
that really shifted things for me because it didn't become about this. It didn't feel then like this, I'm lucky, I'm privileged. It became this permission slip to like, this is an act of generosity to be in my thriving, to be in my joy, to be in my success, whatever that looked
Mhm.
like for me personally, because I can bring that ripple effect to my family, my friends, my community, my country, the world. Um, and when we have that perspective, I think it changes that wiring of like, both things in extremes have to always be true at the same time. Like I
Mm.
get to actually thrive and like that's my birthright. And it doesn't mean there's no bad things. It just means that I don't have to have bad things in order to get good things.
Totally. I think like Anna said it really beautifully. She was talking about how Brené Brown says happiness is the hardest emotion,
Yes, it
right?
is.
And I think for a lot of us that are conditioned with what Nikki was talking about, like that hypervigilance, or even that, like, I know a lot of my conditioning was like, it's okay to have your needs met as long as it doesn't infringe upon someone else's, right? Like that was a lot of my stuff. And so like I feel like you can find yourself in this place where you're always checking it. It's like, wait, but if I'm to this, is that making someone else less this? Or if I share this, are they going to feel this? And you can kind of try to track that all the time. Like that's that like hypervigilance. And what you're saying is you kind of have to rise above that and be like, I'm not here for anything where it's not like a momentum kind of thing, like that my happiness creates more happiness, creates more
Yes.
of it. Like I'm not here for anything less than that. And I think it takes work to get your brain to that place, you know?
I wrote in my diary probably like 8 months ago. I was like, I'm so scared to share my joy because I worry that it would make someone's bad day worse. And I really didn't want to do that. And that's when I had this thought of like, okay, we have to look at this
Yeah.
because someone else sharing their joy doesn't make my day worse.
Yeah.
Right. And I think if we're empathetic, compassionate, sensitive beings, it's really hard to have personal celebration amongst other people's grief or even collective grief. And how do we trust that the good is really good for everyone?
Totally. And trust ourselves enough to hold that. Mhm.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Nikki said her word of the year is trust. And that she's
Mm-hmm.
reading a book called BFF by Christy Tate that uses a memoir about female friendships to illustrate this, and that it's really changed her brain. I love that, Nikki. That's so cool.
Mm.
But I think that that's true. It's like me sharing something with my best friend only ever makes her day better. Like my joy
Yes,
only ever radiates to her. If it didn't, then like we are not in a good dynamic. It doesn't mean I'm doing something wrong.
exactly.
Yeah. And I think we have
Yeah.
to trust our audience on that level too. Like
Mm-hmm.
if your audience is like your close people in your community, like you should hold them to the same standard that you would your
Yes.
friend that you could share that to. And again, I just think it takes like a lot to do that. I know for me too, I spoke to this in my Instagram stories a little bit today too, because I feel like I'm in like this really kind of big like up level season too. And it's very weird to have that juxtaposed against a world that feels insane right now. And even that is like the same thing. Like the world needs our advocacy and all of that, but it also needs our joy too. And I think
Yeah.
it's really hard to hold the nuance of that.
Mm-hmm.
What are you
Mm-hmm.
feeling about that right now? I mean, I'm sure you're having a different experience in Canada, but like, what does it look like to be holding like the absolute like peak fruition of like your dreams and then also be like, and the world is a shit show.
I feel like I've really brought it home because I'm raising a son now, which hits different.
Yeah, I hear
And
that.
it's like, there's something for me, and I know this isn't really popular because we have the conversation around like gender and biology and gender norms and all that. Um, and I have to sit with that personally in terms of like my own stuff. But for me, having a daughter was different because it was like I could picture her at my age. I could picture her. There was just this different personal connection because I saw myself in her.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
With a son, it's like I said to my mom yesterday, I'm like, I feel this different level of responsibility around like, we know men have a more tendency to violence. We know all these things. I also have been so blessed to have the most amazing men in my life. Like when I gave birth to my daughter, there was a room of just men.
Mm,
Not for the actual birthing, but the
yeah.
laboring. I have three brothers, my dad, my husband, very close to me. I've only been surrounded by amazing men. And I feel this weight of like raising a son to be this amazing man, this human that like leaves a real legacy. And I have to figure out how to do that as a mom because and you have a son too. I don't know if you can speak to this, but like, I don't look at him and see myself the way I do when I look at my daughter.
Yeah.
And I really feel like it's brought home to me like this deep, deep responsibility of how do I raise a man that is like counterculture in a lot of ways and is actually going to be a protector and a warrior for the good and loving and all these things that I really value, because you see what happens in the society for both girls and boys, men and women, but like you see what happens in society when we get lost.
Yeah, totally. I mean, what comes up there for me too is that like with each, I mean, I agree with you completely. Like Nikki said, raising the next generation of men is such a privilege and responsibility. I mean, totally. I completely agree with that. But, and I think what the point is there is sometimes when we get all the things we want personally, what it makes us focus on is more ripple, legacy, that
Yeah,
stuff.
legacy,
And I
totally.
think that's really important to say, because like for me, that's what keeps me excited in business. A lot
Hmm.
of times, I mean, I've been doing this for gosh, almost 9, 10 years at this point.
Hmm.
Like that's the kind of stuff that continues to, I think, create excitement year over year. Is like, how am I growing? What does the ripple effect look like? How am I improving things for me and other people? And like, how am I using what I've created for more? And I think when we stay too rooted in like it's just about this one thing of like getting what I want, then it does get boring over time. But when
Hmm.
you can make it bigger, when you're
Hmm.
like, oh, now that I have this thing I want, whatever it is, resources, money in your business, et cetera, it's like, what more do I do with that? A son. Okay, how do I make this impactful? I think that's when it's like you can keep having the thing you really want and make it meaningful, but you create new meaning, right?
Yeah, I talk about this with my clients around the 4 stages of success and wealth. The first is survival, because that's really where most of my clients find me, where they're
Yeah.
like, I need to quit the job. I need to replace my 9 to 5 income. Like, I want to pay the bills. Like, they can't even dream bigger than that. Right.
Right. I mean, nor should they have to, right?
Exactly. And then it's like, okay, this is working. Like, now I'm making more money than I thought I could. Now there's the success wealth. And this is when it's like fun to buy the bag and it's fun to like,
Mhm.
spoil yourself. And there's this more like ego in a healthy way, right? Like
Yeah,
there's this like
totally.
material thing. And then it becomes legacy. And it's like, okay, now it's generational. It's like for my family. But the final phase for me, I think, is stewardship.
Yeah.
And it's like, this isn't actually mine. I'm simply a steward of resources. I'm a steward of this generational patterning. I'm a steward of love. I'm a steward of all these things. And so I'm getting these things as a channel to like share. And like it's mine, but also not. And I feel like that's kind of where I'm sitting with. I've always felt like children are like we're borrowing them from God, right?
Um,
Like my daughter is not mine. She's her own person with her own plan and her own purpose. And that's between her and her creator. And I'm here as a guardian on that path. And so, yeah, I got the thing I wanted. And also my son has his own divine like path and purpose and plan for his life. And I'm here to be a guardian of that. Yes, I've made a successful business and I'm so blessed for that. And um, it's resources that I'm being entrusted with to create change for other people too. And so I think that, this is why I'm passionate about women and mothers having access to resources, because we do tend to naturally go there.
yes, totally. Yes. That's kind of like where our brains at. It's funny
Yeah.
you say that to make this like a little uh like almost like bring it to the like more materialistic realm. I think you're so right though, because I haven't like my son is potty trained now. And so I feel like I'm entering a new
It's a big
phase. I'm like,
deal.
oh, I can like have a non-diaper bag and shit like that. And so I bought myself a really nice bag the other day. And I was thinking about how like it just doesn't hit like it used
Hmm.
to. Like it's
Hmm.
nice. I'm glad I kind of like need a new bag. But like it just doesn't hit at all like it used to. And I think what happens with that, and again, that can sound like kind of silly or privilege, but I think it's important to say that because if you don't move through those levels, it stops feeling exciting to be in business
Yes,
because you're
exactly.
like, wait, I'm not getting this hit. And then what you do is you go do crazy shit in your business to try to get these hits in other ways.
Yes.
Like, should I go burn it down? Should I do this? Do I need to
Yes.
scale to 20 times that? And you try like you're like, where's the dopamine almost, right? And I
Mhm.
think like what you're talking about is where it comes from. Like you have to see a bigger, broader picture that's far
Mhm.
outside of your like small circle. Um,
Mhm.
or it's hard to stay in it. It's hard to stay invested in, or it's hard not to make it wrong because you're like, this doesn't feel how it used to feel.
Yeah. And I think it really helps with the guilt piece if you feel like you're thriving and other people are not, because it's like, okay, they can borrow from this. Like
Mhm.
there's this dialogue outside of yourself that I think is important, because otherwise it just starts to feel empty.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I think that's when people make the business wrong. They're like, "Oh, the business is
Yeah.
doing it for me in the way it used to." And it's like, "No, no, no, you just have a bigger thing to reach into. You have a bigger conversation to have. You have something else to make meaning out of or make matter, right?" Mhm.
Mhm. And I think
Like,
it's exciting if you're in the survival mode to know that this is all where you're going.
mhm. And I think the other thing about that is like sometimes then when I hear people at this level talking about like legacy or even stewardship, I feel like they make it wrong to be in the
Totally.
survival one, right? They're like, ew, and if all you care about is a bag, and it's like, no, 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 you have to fucking care about some version of that at some point. If you're always skipping over what it can do for you or what it can mean for you, you're missing such important growth elements in it too. So it's just
Yes.
like, it all matters, right?
Mhm. You have to go through each phase and
Yes.
not make them wrong. And sometimes if you're in one phase, you forget, because it's been so long, you forget what it's like to be in an earlier phase. This is why I love working with early stage entrepreneurs when, a lot of business coaches really struggle with that phase.
Yeah.
I love it because I'm like, oh my gosh, like this is like the beginning of so much possibility.
Mhm.
And it changes your life, and it has to change your life first before we can move beyond.
And also, I think what's so helpful to say there too is like, again, I'll kind of like almost like spoiler alert for literally season 11, but that's what it's making me think of is like, and then sometimes we grow to this point in our business and then we have stuff happen and we almost have to go back to only caring about
Yeah.
what is for ourselves, right?
Mhm.
Like, I think you really had to be in that place for a while too when you
Mhm.
were going through all this is to be like, I'm not giving to anyone else right now. I mean, apart
Mhm.
from obviously like your clients and stuff, but it's like,
Yeah.
you're like, I have to pour into me right now. And I
Mhm.
think like so it's not like once you get through the phases, you never move to a different one. It's like it all works together. And I think it's so
Mhm.
true. And it changes in different ways at different times, you
Mhm.
know?
And oftentimes, in my experience, I've been in one area and another in a different area, and it's humbling
Mhm.
and it's beautiful. And I've learned not to make that wrong.
Totally. Yes. It's not like this is like the pinnacle. It's like not
No.
like if I ever was like, wait, I'm getting a fucking huge hit off a bag again or whatever, that would
Yeah.
ever be a problem. Like it's not better or worse, it's just different.
Yeah. Yeah. It's flow, not finish line. Right.
Totally. So for you and kind of like sitting in this moment right now of like
Mhm.
the thing I wanted has happened. I am here, I have arrived. Like what has been most like unexpected in that? Like is it that well whatever, I won't even give examples. You got my question.
Um, I think how heavy I was for so long, like
Yeah.
when you're in it, it's hard, you're feeling feels, that, but like it takes distance from something to like really fully conceptualize the whole experience. And like I'm in the processing of that, like,
Yeah.
whoa, like that was 10x harder than I realized or allowed myself to even realize.
I think
Um,
it's really interesting because I feel like sometimes we make that wrong too, but it's actually so
mhm,
self-protective,
mhm.
right?
Yeah, I couldn't cope
Um,
with it all.
yeah, like I mean, this is not the same thing, but just to, like identify with that feeling, like Bennett didn't really sleep for 2 years. And I remember being like, this is hard, but I'm like mostly fine. This is challenging, but I'm okay. And then when I like started sleeping, I was like, what the fuck?
Like,
Like
how did
that
I
was really
survive?
bad and I was not okay.
Yeah.
Brain's just like, and I think like I think we're both people who are pretty embodied, pretty in touch with ourselves and our body. I mean,
Mhm.
obviously, we could always go deeper. I could always be better there. But I don't think it's because you're totally trying to dissociate necessarily. I think
Mhm.
it's like the healthy version of how we get through things, you know?
I think it's wise
Yes.
because, like, otherwise I would have shut down.
Oh my God, you couldn't keep going. Yeah. Like
Yeah.
if I was like,
Yeah.
had awareness of how bad it was, I would have just been like, oh, I should just stop everything. Like this is the
Exactly.
thing. Yeah.
And also, do not minimize sleep deprivation. Isla never slept. Same thing. It is torture. I mean, they
Okay.
literally use it in torture. So it's like,
Yes. It's true.
yeah,
And
it's
you just
hard.
don't like you can't see it for what it is. Sometimes they're probably same thing with you. You were like, oh, I'm going through this hard thing, but I am like good.
Hmm.
And it's like, no, that was not
No.
what was happening. But like, what do you just keep moving?
Yeah. And, you know, I think part of me was like, also like, I need the baby to like heal the loss. And I always knew the baby wouldn't heal the loss, but like, I think I needed to have the happy ending in order for like a different way of healing to happen. And that has been true on some level, but it's also been true that it's opened up more grief than I expected. And you know, again, just sitting in the both has been, I mean, I feel like that's just the story of my life. It's getting kind of boring. It's like both
Both,
and
both.
this
Yes,
and that
yes,
and nuance.
totally.
But you get what you want and then you have to sit in it and not make the next goal right away because that is easy to do. And that's kind of a way to avoid being in the joy and in it.
Totally. I
Yeah.
hear what you're saying. It's almost like this is your work. Is to be like,
Yes.
if you didn't get the thing, you would have had this whole other layer of processing to go through. But in getting the thing and having to like accept that and then grieve all the other things you didn't get is still very real.
Yeah,
I said, like life strikes
totally.
you with experiences or kids or circumstances, and then you have to stabilize. And then once you're stable, you can reach out again. Yeah, totally. And I even think, Robyn, probably for you right now, 8 weeks postpartum is not like the most stable time, right?
Yeah.
It probably is in so many ways compared to everything you've been through. And it's still like a lot of things are in flux. So much changes in such short periods of time. Your hormones, their sleep,
Hmm.
their schedule, like all of it. And so I'm sure there's like going to be like a long runway to coming out of
Hmm.
it. I know for me there was when with the sleep thing, right? It wasn't just like one time
Hmm.
night I wasn't fine and then I was sleeping and I was like that wasn't it at all.
Yeah. I have a long journey ahead of me with my body.
Yeah.
And I was crying to my husband a couple days ago because I was like, it's another layer of like anger for me that like the journey I had to take I'm still paying for it in a way because all the treatments and all the surgeries, everything was very hard on my body. And now I can heal that. But like
Yeah.
that just feels like Mount Everest to climb.
Yeah.
And I have anger around it because it's like, oh, like I didn't have that with Isla, you know? It was
Yeah.
easy and it's like this is the next thing. And so it's constantly this conversation with myself around like how do I reframe that? Right? Like thank you body for like pulling us through that. Thank you, thank you, thank you, gratitude. And I think like in terms of like the fertility piece, relationship to body is just huge. Feeling abandoned, feeling betrayed, feeling frustrated, feeling uncomfortable, like punishing your body, all the injections, all the everything. And then gratitude that it did carry my
Yeah.
baby and it did a really good job in pregnancy. And now I get to like have a different relationship to it outside of motherhood too. Like it's the first time in 4 years my body just gets to be mine.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm still nursing, but like it's just like a weird thing. And I think that this coming back to me outside of that, like I'm a mother more than ever. And also, who am I outside of mother gets to
Yeah.
be the next step.
Especially because that wouldn't have served you in the last season when you were trying so hard to be another mother, to be like, and me outside of mom, and I'm focused totally on that would have taken you away from what you were moving to. So now having the space to do that. I mean, again, I think to parallel it to business, it makes so much sense. Like a thing that I see happen with people sometimes is like they finally make the money and then their Mount Everest is like, oh, I have to reorient my entire relationship with money. I have to see this totally differently. I have to not spend it all the moment I get it, or I have to not hoard it all, or I have to like let myself buy myself. So like insert whatever
Yeah.
version is. But I think like big growth, getting things you want always comes with trade-offs. It comes with new challenges, sometimes even bigger challenges. Like you said, like the Mount Everest thing. Um, and I just think that that's so important to name because I feel like when we think of like getting everything we want, what the implication of that is like, and nothing else comes with that. And it's
Yeah,
like, and something
exactly.
else always fucking comes with that, you know?
Yes,
Mhm.
always.
Yes. Nova said, appreciate the reminder of seasons and cycles with stewardship and selfishness. Totally. Yeah,
Mhm.
so much of that.
Full
Um,
permission.
and I think with those like big up levels and then that like coasting time too, like it all is cyclical. It all comes with like,
Mhm.
oh, I've made the money and now I have all this growth to do. And then there will probably be like a plateau point of that where you're like can chill and it feels easy. And then there will be another big growth thing or like same in your motherhood journey or
Mhm.
experience, right? It's like right now you're like, okay, he's here. Like, let me breathe that in. And then, like you said, then you're going to have to go, what does this mean? Who am I outside
Yeah.
of this? And it all fluctuates. But I do think seasonality is so valuable here in the conversation of, trade-offs of like the big stuff always comes with that. I was talking about how I feel like I'm really seeing the momentum right now from like a lot of the like family of origin work I put in really, really hard work around last year. And
Mhm.
some of it's so good. And I'm like, oh, I'm in this. This is so amazing. And some of it, I'm like, oh, there are so many crunchy shape, like little pieces of things that I like have to clean up
Mhm.
because of this. And again, it's like, I want the up level. I want the shift. I've been working towards it. I've been intentionally doing work. And it doesn't mean that I still wish I couldn't like bypass the stuff that comes with
Exactly.
it. Mhm.
This is why I think social media gets hard for people is because we compare our stuff to other people.
Yeah.
And we all know we're comparing to people's highlight reel. And even though I work really hard at being really honest on in my own stuff and sharing the bad, it's still the highlight reel to a degree,
Oh my
right?
God, of course. Yeah. Yeah.
And so like when you're looking at someone else's life, you're looking at someone else getting something and you're still in the waiting, or you feel behind, or you feel like it's never going to happen for you. Just know that like every single person's still climbing a mountain, even though the thing you're comparing to, like that's not the mountain they're on anymore. Maybe
Yeah.
there's still mountains. We're always doing it.
Totally. Totally. So good. Okay. So any like last thoughts or perspectives from the like sitting in the thing I've been working towards for 4 years? Like any like notes from the trenches, let's say.
Um, it's been better than I expected.
Yeah.
And like that has, yeah, like even just today, my husband's away right now and I was up with him all night, but still getting good sleep because I go to sleep with him. But I woke up and he was smiling at me and I was just like, I because we didn't know what we were having when I was pregnant, but I was like, I spent so many nights dreaming about this moment, and it's better than I ever dreamed of.
Yes.
And I say that obviously that's my dream, but I think it's so easy to gaslight ourselves too, out of like the grass is always greener, or like maybe it's not my
Yeah.
dream, or like maybe it's not going to be as good as I think it is, or just the way that our brain will try to protect us and kind of like sabotage us from like actually saying, I want this, and like making that declaration. And like as a woman, publicly saying, like, I desire this for myself and I'm going for it publicly. There is so much wisdom I've gained from that journey,
Yes.
when we don't know that we're going to get it, but to go all in and to like really feel the desire and to like really unapologetically declare that desire. that is a seed that will create so much abundance in your life. And it's
Yes.
so, so scary to do because it's scary to say, I really deeply desire this thing that I might not get.
Totally. And I think our industry also makes that really hard because it
Yeah.
feels like, and then if you don't get it, something's wrong with you, or you didn't do the right
Yes.
work, or you didn't get aligned enough, or insert whatever like thing.
I love what your eyes just did there.
Oh my. But like, this is the permission we have to start giving other women, I think, is that
Mhm.
like, I like see you and like honor you and am inspired by you because of the journey and because of your boldness and your willingness and your bravery, not because like it for sure 100% 10 out of 10 times works out for you. Like that's
Mhm.
just the dumb shit of like us craving certainty and thinking that if someone else can ensure certainty for themselves, they can ensure it for me. And when
Mhm.
we let go of like recognizing that that is like not what we should be searching for and it's not something anyone else can give us, I think it's when it is exciting to be like, I want this thing and I'm going to see what happens. Or
Yeah.
like the most fun I've ever had in my business is when I did shit like that. Let me try the partnership model, see what happens. Let me try this NFT. Come with me. Let's see how it goes. Da, da, da. Like it's always when I have the most fun.
Mhm.
And I just think that it's like, yeah, we're in our industry is not attractive to like publicly go for something if you're not sure you're gonna get it. We just have to like get rid of that idea that like someone else can guarantee our certainty, you know?
Well, isn't that what makes business not fun is when we don't make moves because we're so scared of like the rejection, the failure, and then the internalized shame as a result of not getting the thing.
Yeah.
Um, and yet that's holding us back, all of us, from playing bigger and like truly creating that life that we want. So for me, getting the thing is like so much more than the dream realized. It's like this journey of like you can say like one, you can actually identify what you desire, like be
Yes.
honest
Yeah.
about it. So many of us are not even honest about what, and I even had to do that work with you
Yeah.
in business and outside of because I was like, well, I can ask for more than this. Right.
Mhm.
And so just like knowing that it's safe to desire more for yourself, and then it's safe and encouraged to like declare that desire and go all out on that desire and like know that the right people will champion you regardless of the outcome. Cause like that's kind of like secondary.
Yes, 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 yes. Amen. So, so good. Nikki said this is such a great conversation. I agree.
Mm,
Robyn, I adore you. I love how much value you
likewise.
always bring. If you guys want, I'm going to put a link to listen to Robyn's reunions episode. That's where we talk all about like what happened in her pregnancy, the journey, all of that. But this was
Mhm.
just so good. And you just do such a beautiful job of holding like the nuance of these big conversations. So thank you for being here with
Oh.
us. Thank you for letting us like come full circle with you to this place where he's here. And I'm just so grateful for
I'm
you.
so grateful for you and for everyone in this community who held me and shared in my pain and in my grief and in my joy. Like I'll never have the words to thank you. I knew that Lacey would have the best people in her world, but I've been even blown away by the kindness and the real relationships that you've cultivated. That's really been a gift to me. So thank you.
You're so welcome. Thank you. All right. Love you.
Love you.
Bye,
Mwah. Bye.
guys.